Mama. In addition to reading, listening is another key activity that will lead us to make progress in our target language. To be clear, in this video, we will be talking about listening without using a written representation of what is being said. For example, listening to a show without subtitles instead of with them. We will talk about hybrid input in a future video in this series. Hybrid input being either listening with the help of a written representation or reading with the help of an audio track. For example, watching a show with subtitles or reading a book while listening to an audiobook. So again, in this video, we are only talking about listening without a written representation. But there are a few questions we need to answer first. What do we mean when we refer to listening as an input learning activity? What unique benefits does it offer compared to reading? What unique challenges does it present? In this video, we will answer all of these questions. When we say the word listening in the context of input-based language learning, what we are talking about is hearing a language being spoken and understanding messages within what is being spoken. The key to listening is to have the intent to understand messages in what you are hearing. In this video, we focus a lot on audiovisual content, which is content like movies and TV shows that have both a visual and an audio component. Listening can also apply to content that solely has an audio component, such as an audiobook, for example. However, we only recommend quite advanced learners to focus on learning new words and grammar from pure audio content, because it can be quite difficult. We'll have a video about pure audio listening, or pure listening for short, later in this series. That being said, pure listening as a form of review is fantastic for learners of any level, including beginners. This refers to re-listening to TV shows or movies you've already watched before. For example, re-listening to an episode of your favorite language show while you're out on a walk is a great review activity. Another quick point we want to make, which is a point that will be further elaborated in a video later in the series, is that we recommend having access to subtitles or another written representation of the content you are listening to whenever possible. Even though you won't be reading along with it, but simply because, for example, being able to pause a video to look up the word you just heard using subtitles makes learning new vocabulary and grammar while listening much easier and more efficient. Simply put, being able to understand what someone is saying when they speak to you is an essential aspect of becoming proficient in another language. If you can understand what you hear, you unlock the worlds of movies, TV, podcasts, and music. Learning to listen well will also give you a solid pillar to lean on when you reach the output stage and begin having conversations. I don't think I need to convince you, but listening is important. Like reading, listening also comes with its own unique benefits and challenges. Let's start with the benefits, which can be broken down into two sections. 1. The benefits of listening regardless of whether there is a visual component or not, and 2. The additional benefits derived from listening with a visual component. Then we will move on and talk about the challenges. The unique benefits of listening even without a visual component are perhaps a bit obvious, but let's talk about some of them now. The first benefit is simply that unlike with reading, you will constantly hear words being pronounced correctly. This can help you build a strong intuition for how the language is supposed to sound and how individual words within that language are specifically pronounced. Another major benefit is that you will hear how native speakers actually speak the language. The reality is that most languages have many different ways they can be spoken. Some people speak roughly with a low tone of voice and with a lot of abbreviated sounds. Some speak very clearly but with a high-pitched voice, yet with a slight regional accent. And yet others speak with any possible unique combination of tone, pitch, coarseness, clarity, etc. The reality is that in order to build a native-like level of listening comprehension, that you will need to spend time listening to all these different speaking styles and become familiar with them. Unlike reading, listening will allow you to do that. Lastly, and similarly to the last point, there are many contracted sounds that happen when speaking a language. For example, in English, no one actually says, "What is it?" Everyone says, "What is it?" These types of sound contractions need to be listened to many times to be internalized. The unique benefit of listening is that you will quickly become familiar with them. The immediate and obvious benefit of listening with a visual component as an input activity is that, unlike reading, It is multi-sensory. Whereas text must communicate all of its messages via words alone, audiovisual materials let us offload some of the burden of understanding onto our ears and eyes. With movies or TV shows, we can hear the emotion in somebody's voice, and you can see what they're actually doing. The visual component can be especially useful in helping us to understand the meanings of new words and sentences as they are being spoken. For example, you hear a knight in a movie say, "You have my sword,"
You have my sword.
and then hold up a sword. You then hear a fellow warrior say, "And my axe,"
And my axe.
and holds up his axe. It becomes much easier to understand what the words sword and axe mean, or that "you have" means that he is presenting his sword in the service of who he is speaking to. Similarly, we talk differently than we write. By nature of being spontaneous, conversations tend to feature simpler sentences than books do, and they use a more limited set of vocabulary. There's a lot of descriptive and narrative language in books that you may never hear or use in real life, but this is less likely to be the case when you're listening. An additional advantage of this multi-sensory audio-visual content is that it is more memorable by its very nature. You are not only listening to a message, you are hearing it spoken in an emotional way, and you are seeing a character act in accordance with what they are saying. This often makes it easier to naturally learn from this type of content and also to remember the flashcards you create from it. In fact, most people find them more enjoyable to review than flashcards created from reading content. A final benefit that audiovisual content has over written content is that it takes less effort to engage with. When reading, you must remain continuously alert and actively read in order to process new messages. On the other hand, while watching a show, you will often effortlessly understand many new messages by casually listening to what is being said and seeing what is happening on screen. Additionally, reading as a beginner not only is more difficult because it simply requires more effort, but also because a learner's understanding will be so low, it will be quite boring. However, watching a show as a beginner can still be quite entertaining due to the visual component and being able to hear a language spoken in different ways by different people. While using audio flashcards or engaging in conversations with native speakers can be valuable tools for improving your listening ability, sitting down and immersing yourself in audio content in your target language should be your primary method of mastering this skill. Listening also comes with its fair share of challenges. One is the availability of subtitles for the content you'd like to watch. As mentioned earlier in this video, even when just listening to content, we still recommend having a written representation of the content you are listening to available whenever possible to facilitate looking up words or checking if you heard the word correctly or not. Unfortunately, perfect subtitles that match one for one what is being spoken are not always available. If you are a beginner, we recommend only listening to content that has human-created or curated perfect one-to-one subtitles if possible. If you are intermediate or above in a language though, you can use Migaku AI to generate subtitles for any unsubtitled content you are viewing. Another challenge is that listening to content happens at the pace of the speech in the actual content. In contrast to reading, which can be done at one's own pace, listening, which is again to hear and comprehend what is being said, must be done at the pace of the content being listened to. We'll talk about strategies to effectively listen in one of our next few videos. Yet another challenge is that the content you are listening to might not always be easy to understand, not only because of the speed considerations that we just mentioned, but also because there are many unique ways a language can be spoken. It might be difficult to understand a child, a gangster, or an old woman because of the different specific characteristics of how they speak. For example, native speakers often slur, smash words together, scream and shout, drop sounds, and have many other unique verbal habits that are not present when hearing a clearly pronounced form of your target language. Further, if there is loud background noise or music, it can make discerning what is being said even more difficult without a lot of practice. In conclusion, listening is incredibly important as an input learning activity, but it's also challenging. Improving your listening comprehension will take a sustained effort across several hundred hours. In the next few videos, we'll talk about how to determine if a piece of content is right for you and how to actually approach listening input. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Otherwise, see you in the next video.